On a Sunday night in 1987, somebody broke into live television in Chicago. Then they did it again. 2 stations, same city, same mask, no arrest. The footage itself lasted less than 2 minutes. The mystery lasted decades. At first glance, it looks like one of the strangest pranks ever put on tape. Look closer, and it looks worse. Someone did not just make weird television. They seized control of a real broadcast signal in one of America's biggest cities, did it in public, and disappeared. That is why the Max Headroom hijack never really died. Not because it was random, because it probably wasn't. The date was November 22nd, 1987. Chicago viewers saw 2 interruptions that night, one on WGN and one on WTTW. Both showed a person in a Max Headroom mask, the plastic grin of a character who at the time was everywhere. The first interruption cut into the news. The second hit during Doctor Who. Together, they lasted just over 2 minutes. That sounds small. It wasn't. This was not somebody fiddling with a home antenna. To override a live station feed, even briefly, meant knowing where the broadcast chain was exposed and having the equipment to hit it. On screen, it looked ridiculous. Behind the screen, it probably took planning. The first break came during WGN's 9 o'clock news in the middle of the sports segment. The screen went dark. Then the figure appeared. Max Headroom mask. Corrugated metal background. Harsh electronic noise. No clear message, at least not in words. It did not last long. WGN engineers reacted quickly, changed their studio to transmitter link frequency, and knocked the intruder off the air. Then came Dan Roan's live reaction.
You're wondering what's happened. So am I. Actually, the computer that we have running our news from time to time took off and went wild. So what we're going to do is start over from the top of the Bears.
If you're wondering what happened, so am I. That line stuck because it said exactly what the audience felt. But the more important point is this. The first hijack proved the hard part. Somebody had managed to push a fake signal into real television, live, in real time. A little after 11, it happened again. This time the target was WTTW, while it was airing Doctor Who. The second hijack lasted longer, and it did more than interrupt a program. It poisoned the whole atmosphere of the night. The figure returned. The metal panel behind him no longer spun. The voice was distorted, frantic, half joke and half breakdown. Fragments were recognizable. A new Coke slogan. Local media references. Chuck Swirsky's name. Bits of nonsense that felt specific to somebody and meaningless to everybody else. That is part of what still makes the clip effective. It is not clean enough to decode and not random enough to dismiss. It feels like you are staring at a private joke you were never meant to understand. Then the broadcast turns cruder, meaner, more uncomfortable. By the end, it feels less like a prank than a public contamination. For a moment, television stops feeling stable. It stops feeling sealed. It starts feeling porous, hijackable, soft. That is the real shock of the second intrusion. Not just that it was weird, that it made the medium itself look defenseless. The Max Headroom hijack stayed famous because it hit 2 nerves at once. First, it was unforgettable television. Second, it exposed a real weakness. In 1987, stations sent programming from studio to transmitter using microwave links, studio to transmitter links, or STLs. Those links were not casual gear. They were part of serious broadcast infrastructure. If you wanted to override one, you needed more than nerve. You needed position, timing, technical knowledge, and enough power to beat the legitimate signal. That changes the story. This was not random chaos that happened to touch a station. It was a targeted intrusion into an analog system that could be overpowered if you knew exactly where to press. That is why the incident still matters. It was absurd on the surface, but underneath it sat competence. The likeliest explanation is the capture effect. In analog transmission, if two signals arrive on the same frequency, the stronger one wins. Not partially, completely. The receiver locks onto the dominant signal and suppresses the weaker one. That meant an attacker did not need to destroy the station's feed. They just needed to overpower it at the right point. Conceptually, that is simple. In practice, it is not. You had to know the frequency. You needed enough transmission power. You needed line of sight to the tower. And you had to assemble the whole thing without exposing yourself first. The first intrusion may also have taught the hijackers something. WGN reacted fast. WTTW could not. Same idea, different outcome. That difference suggests this was not somebody fooling around with gear in a basement. It suggests testing, adaptation, and a clear sense of how stations would respond. So who had the ability to do this? The safest answer is still the best one. Somebody with real broadcast knowledge, or someone close to it. Maybe a current engineer, maybe a former one, maybe a small group with overlapping skills. There are reasons people keep circling media workers, local tech subcultures, and prank-minded performance types. The references in the WTTW segment feel local. The technical side feels practiced. The on-camera material feels coordinated, not improvised from nothing. And it almost certainly was not one person alone. The final sequence alone suggests multiple participants, props, timing, and setup. Still, suspicion is cheap. Evidence is the problem. Nearly 4 decades later, no theory has crossed the line from plausible to proven. The hijackers chose their moment well. The broadcasts were short. The disguise worked. The audio was mangled. The technical trail was thin. And this happened in 1987, before digital logs, before network forensics, before every device quietly documented its own use. The surviving record exists, mainly because ordinary people happened to record television at home. That matters. Without home VCR recordings, one of the most famous acts of broadcast piracy in American history might have faded into rumor. The FCC investigated, but the case never turned solid. No suspects, no decisive trail, no public solution. Then time did the rest. The statute of limitations expired in 1992. After that, the hijack was no longer an active threat to solve. It became a relic, a clip, a legend with just enough evidence to stay real. The Max Headroom hijack lasted minutes. Its afterlife has lasted almost 40 years. Part of that is the image itself. The mask, the buzzing audio, the feeling that a familiar medium suddenly went wrong in a way nobody could immediately fix. Part of it is the method. This was not magic. It was a technical breach pulled off in public against institutions that were supposed to control the signal, and part of it is the disappearance. The people behind it did not claim credit in any verifiable way. They did not reappear. They did not get dragged into the light later. They left the tape behind and nothing solid attached to it. That is why the case still works. It is not just strange footage from the analog era. It is a moment when television lost control of itself, briefly, in front of everyone. Then control came back. The explanation never did.